Greetings sailors, welcome to a viewer Warships replay, and today we have this Nagato game courtesy of long-time viewer Brett50. Now, full disclosure, I actually met Brett and his girlfriend at Tankfest last year. They gave me cookies, so clearly this is, bribery and favoritism in action. And I have actually had a replay of Brett's on the channel before, a World of Tanks game, although it was like 2 years ago. So, yeah, and given that Tankfest was like 9-10 months ago, that bribe, it took a while to come to fruition, but clearly that's what it is, though, bribery and corruption. That's what you should do. You should give me cookies and I will put your replays up on my channel. So, he's going to start off with a very, very nice salvo indeed. That Nuremberg is almost at max range, and yeah, if only all my first salvos would do that when I was playing in my battleships. And, well, this entire match is really going to give you some flavour of the highs and the lows of battleships all in one go. It's not quite archetypal, though. I mean, he does have a destroyer to contend with a couple of times, but he's never in serious damage of taking any torpedoes in his side, and he also never has to worry about being focused by the enemy carrier. So it's not the full battleship experience, and yes, that is a bit of a replay derp there, but it kind of comes close in at least as far as the guns go, and how interesting the RNG can be sometimes. So next up is this Colorado, he's sailing fairly broadside, but even the broadside of a Colorado, I mean, I know it's not a popular ship, but it's still quite tough. And even at this kind of an angle, 4 hits for, that was a pair of overpen, so it's not that easy, and it's kind of the same with the New Mexico as well, against its own, like its same tiers. If you, even at what would be a dangerous angle in a Japanese battleship, you can get away with it more. And he switches his fire now to a much softer target, the enemy Pensacola, and well, if he's lucky, he can maybe get a few thousand damage out of this. He gets a couple of pens. That should be a nice, reasonably squashy target. He's quite broadside, and hello! Okay, Brett, own up. How many goats did you sacrifice prior to playing this game exactly? That's 2 cruisers. He's just wiped off the face of the earth. 5 citadels. He's had as many citadels as he has had non-citadel hits. Or is that 6? I don't know. I think actually that's a 6, and I can't quite read properly. That's always possible. Anyway, so 5 citadels and 6 hits. So yeah, that's a pretty good ratio of citadels so far. He's probably not going to be able to keep it up, but still, that's a nice start. Another nice series of hits into the New Mexico, who is backing out from the cover of the island. And, oh, hello, well, there's a Hatsuharu. That's something to be aware of. Although, knowing that the Hatsuharu is there is half the battle. This New Mexico, though, I can't figure out what he was thinking. I really can't. Now, he's really only broadside as far as Brett is concerned. The other stuff that's shooting at him, apart from the Miyoko, is going to have a tougher time with the angling. But even so, that's not a good plan. Brett himself gets fairly lucky with the return fire. And there's the torpedo. So, yeah, that Hatsuharu was, I don't know, just relying on the drop indicator rather than actually trying to compensate manually for Brett's turn. Now, Brett has got basically all 3 enemy battleships to his north. The Colorado and the Nagato are fairly close together, and actually the Nagato is going to be much more of a problem for him than the Colorado, but the New Mexico's also there firing at him as well, so he can't really go too gung-ho, because he doesn't have any battleship support. The Fuso is further to his south. Well, the Fuso is probably still within range of the Nagato, but the chances of getting lots of hits at that kind of maximum range are less likely. And the other Nagato on the team is heading up round to the eastern side of the map, so he might get some shots in at some of these things. In fact, I think he's shooting at the New Mexico, or something is. I mean, it might be the Cleveland, or it might be the York, not sure. But either way, yeah, he's not going to be able to help out against the enemy Nagato and the Colorado so much. So trying for a few more shots on the New Mexico, who's still really quite broadside on. And there's that Nagato. And it might even be the Colorado as well. It's actually quite hard to tell from that angling. But either way, Brett's taken a bit of damage by this point. Nothing major, but something to keep an eye on. He doesn't want to give away too much health. Now this was a 5.2.2 game, so this is before the addition of premium consumables giving you an extra charge. But just looking at the consumables list, I don't think he's using any premium consumables on this ship in this battle. There's also the replay bug where it looks like he's using HE and he's not. He's definitely not. And that was a bit of a bug in some of the earlier versions of the replay system. So he's pressing forward a little bit. We skipped about a minute there. The Hatsuharu is still around here somewhere, as is the Gnevny. And, well, this is taking a bit of a risk, to be quite honest. He's coming around the island, and another citadel on the Königsberg rather, who appears to be AFK. But he's put himself broadside to the enemy Nagato, well within range. And also the Hatsuharu is around. And the fact that he's putting himself against this island, if the Hatsuharu pops around, he's got limited opportunities in terms of manoeuvring. And speak of the devil, yeah, there's torpedoes, and he can avoid them, but that means straightening up again. And that's going to turn out to be bad news. Yes, Brett just got a very nasty taste of his own medicine there. Having been forced to straighten out by the Hatsuharu, he then took, I think that was, what, 2 citadels? That was a lot of damage. So I think this ended up being a very ill-judged move, and it's cost him a lot of health. A lot. He's now going to be a prime target for this Nagato, because he's not going to be that difficult to kill at this point, even if he keeps fairly angled. And you can see there, the Nagato's armor's not that great. And so getting penned even at quite a steep angle, it's still entirely possible. He actually took, what, 2 deck penetrations there? So, yeah, he is in serious trouble at this point. Even if the Hatsuharu now just completely leaves him alone, this Nagato could well kill him. Now the Nagato is taking a bit of fire from elsewhere. That looks like the Cleveland and Fuso. But we can see from the minimap traces, there's a Gnevny slipping down the 1-2 line. And the carrier, the Ranger, is down there all alone. The Ranger's definitely going to be in trouble sooner rather than later. And if we look over on the other side of the minimap, there's the other remaining enemy Gnevny pressing down that side as well. And the Hatsuharu's still alive. So basically, although his team has pushed up round on the eastern flank, and they're now putting a lot of pressure on the enemy cap that Colorado's trying to defend, as is the carrier. But Brett really was the most western player, or the westernmost player. So he, given his state now, is not really in a position to turn around and try and... You know, he can still fight the Nagato, but chasing after a pair of destroyers with this amount of health would be a very bad idea. And the cruisers might have been able to do it, but the cruisers seem to have absolutely no interest in going back to defend whatsoever. Because there's a Cleveland and a Nuremberg there, and of the other 3 cruisers that are on his team, they're all pretty much next to the cap circle at this point. So this is bad. Their cap is basically undefended. Now it looks like the Fuso's turning to go back, but again, battleship versus destroyers, it's not optimal. It's definitely not optimal. And meanwhile, this Nagato is continuing to do his best to kill Brett. However, Brett is not done yet. He keeps his guns firing, and that was his high caliber award. So yeah, he's done quite a reasonable amount of damage so far, over 100k. It's not bad at all. And some of that was extremely lucky damage with those citadels. But even so, like I said, it started off as a kind of almost a dreamlike kind of thing, where it's just like, oh yeah, I'll just delete these cruisers in one salvo, and I'll do it twice in a row. But after that point, yeah, I did say it was going to get a bit harder. Now, this Nicholas is being a real team player. He dropped some smoke by Brett, so Brett now has this cover. He can actually continue to put some distance between himself and the enemy Nagato, and he can fire safely without being spotted, so that forces the enemy Nagato to go for other targets. So that was a nice bit of team play from the Nicholas, and Brett actually does thank him in the chat for that, because that buys him enough time to use his final health charge, which he nearly has available. He can almost use his final one of those and get a little bit more health back. It's not going to be that much, but it's going to be better than nothing. The enemy Nagato, meanwhile, well, the other Nagato on Brett's team just went down to his fire, but he is not looking so healthy himself. He's come under the sustained attack of the Fuso, the Cleveland, and both of Brett's team's Nagato. Well, obviously Brett being one of them himself. And Brett actually manages to get the final kill. Meanwhile, the Gremiashi, actually, it wasn't a Gnevny, it was a Gremiashi, is capping. And the Gnevny's going for the carrier. And of the cruisers that were capping, well, the enemy carrier killed the York. So they just lost a bunch of cap points. This is not good. And I think the Miyoko actually ended up drifting out the cap circle and resetting his own cap points as well. So we've skipped on, again, about a minute. This is looking tight. Now, the Gnevny, the enemy Gnevny went for the carrier. If he'd gone for the cap, this would be over already. However, as it was just one enemy ship capping, and there's now multiple friendlies capping the enemy cap, it looks remarkably close even so, but in theory they should have it. But good lord, look at that. Look at how close it is. It looks like there's literally a second or 2 seconds in it. But as it is, they just eke out that victory. So they almost paid a hefty price for ignoring those destroyers going down the flanks. And the Fuso was trying to go back and do something about it, but he was in the wrong ship to do it. So if one of their cruisers had reacted quicker, you know, a Cleveland or something had gone back to defend, it wouldn't have been quite so nail-biting at the end there. But as it was, they just squeaked out a victory. And actually, you might even posit or suppose that the Nicholas laying down smoke maybe saved Brett's ship, and Brett was then able to get in the cap circle, so maybe that made all the difference, just that one action alone. But still, Brett himself had a pretty creditable performance there. It was 125k damage in the end, which it's not, I'm not going to say that's amazing damage. It's good. It's good, but I've seen Nagato games with more damage than that, certainly. But it was just those first couple of salvos and then coming down to such a nail-biting finish that made me, in the end, pick this one out. So, yes, hopefully you've enjoyed it, because Battleship games can have the reputation of not being that interesting or fun to watch. But I think this one was, and I hope you agree with me. And if you do, you can leave any comments about it below. You can hit the like button. You can sub to my channel if you aren't already. And, as always, stay tuned for more.